Welcome to the Ceres podcast. I'm Stelios, founder and director of Ceres, and today I'm joined by my good friend David Miller from Millers in Haxby for another masterclass episode. In these sessions, we dive deep into advanced frying techniques, operational insights, and we speak with key figures in the supply chain to elevate your business. David and I have big plans ahead, and we can't wait to share them with you. Today, we have a fantastic guest. Someone who's been at the heart of the fish supply chain for decades. Gary Warner is the managing director of Warner's Fish Merchants, a family-run business based in Doncaster, South Yorkshire. Founded in 1941, Warner's Fish Merchants has grown into a leading supplier of frozen at sea haddock and cod to fish and chip shops, restaurants and hotels across the UK. Under Gary's leadership, the company has strengthened partnerships with key suppliers, most notably Brim, one of Iceland's largest fishing companies. This ensures a consistent, high-quality supply of fish, a crucial factor in today's unpredictable market. Beyond supplying fish, Gary is passionate about sustainability, industry challenges and long-term supply strategies. He's been vocal about why businesses must think beyond price, especially as factors like international trade, fishing quotas and economic pressures continue to shape the industry. Speaking of business strategy, at Ceres we've been working on something special, a set of powerful calculators to help you understand your costs and supercharge your profit. Knowing your inputs and outputs is crucial. Without it, you're flying blind. These calculators are designed to break down your true costs, giving you a clear picture of your business finances. We've just added a brand new frozen at sea fish cost calculator. The price you pay isn't the price that it cost you. This tool shows you exactly what it costs at the point of serving. Visit our website, try them out and take control of your numbers. This brings us to today's episode sponsor, the Ceres Fish Cake Mix. With prices at the moment heading in the upward direction, it's more important than ever to maximise those profits. I've said this before, but let's take a page from butchers. They turn every single cut and scrap into something valuable. Think of pies, burgers, sausages, nose to tail efficiency. The same principle applies to fish even. The Ceres Fish Cake Mix lets you turn every ounce of fish into profit without sacrificing quality. Instead of wasting trimmings or giving it to the customer, you can trim portions to the perfect size and use the rest in delicious homemade fish cakes. It's fast, easy and very profitable because our fish cake mix allows you to prepare fish cakes quicker than it takes to boil potatoes, even boil fish. And we've curated countless of recipes to help you get started. So, for the perfect finish, pair them with our rustic breadcrumbs specially designed for fish cakes. They won't burn or look unappetizing after cooking. Make more profit today with Ceres Fish Cake Mix, available now at www.ceres.shop with free mainland UK shipping. Do you want to stay ahead and never miss an update from Ceres? Here's how. 1. Join the WhatsApp community feed, a one-way channel for important updates without the noise. 2. Subscribe to our mailing list, get weekly emails and special offers, industry news and podcast updates. 3, well, this is more of what you can do for us. Leave us a review. If you enjoy the podcast, a quick review on your podcast app helps us reach more people in the industry. You'll find all the links in the episode description.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Fish Masterclass. We've got a great guest on today, Gary Warner from Warner's. We're really lucky to have him with us because he's an incredibly busy man.
We don't know that yet. We know he's Gary, but we don't know he's a great guest yet.
Still, I thought you said I was introducing.
Pressure's on. Pressure's on.
You're interfering already.
Go on then. I'll be quiet.
So, good morning, Gary. Thanks for coming on. Tell us what you've been doing already today.
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, thank you for that very dropping me in it there.
Welcome, Gary. David, you might not know this actually. I've asked probably Gary on to this podcast a couple of times over the years, and usually it's been no, I don't do stuff like that. But I'm glad you're with us today. And
yeah, well, I think the industry's in a very difficult situation, and I feel I can contribute something by doing this podcast, and that's the whole reason why I wanted. I feel strongly about certain things, and and that's why I want to be involved today. It's not really about Gary Warner or Warner's Fish Merchants that this is about. It's just about all of us, because all of us are, I think. Are quite severely affected at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to add is that most, whether it's a fish merchant or someone at a higher level, even a vessel owner, I always find that they seem quite interested to talk the price up. Like, when there's a problem or whatever, whether there's a global issue, whatever it might be, lower quotas, which we're going to talk about shortly. But one thing I noticed about you've always been on record when things have been the other way, going down too, and trying to give like brevity to the situation, some context. You helped me with an article, I think it was in November last year when the prices were, you probably don't remember, but you did help us with an article. And, I think we got some of your comments wrong and we had a few phone calls afterwards to get it right. And actually, what I appreciate about that is that the fish price was down, and you were trying to say, look, like, yes, it might be down now, and I've got notes to look back on, but you've got to look further than today. And I think this is one of those conversations we're going to have today as well, that you still have to look further than today.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's just the big picture.
Yeah.
That you need to be looking at all the time. It's constantly looking at all the challenges within the whole industry, and that's where I do believe that most of my experience comes from. And it's not only speaking to people within our industry, our excellent customers that we have, excellent suppliers that we have, but it's also having dialogue with your competitors, or your colleagues, really, because at the end of the day, we're all in this business to service his own needs and his own lives. So,
can I just say, Gary, in a way, you are in competition, but you are you? Because you need these other suppliers around to supply the whole of England. Yeah. And if you don't work together, then
absolutely.
Each business has got to make a living, and your customers, it's their choice whether they go with that company or not, and that's
exactly.
But that's another story. But coming down to you guys of the suppliers to in restaurants, fish and chip shops, wherever the fish may go, without you guys working together, it's just a battle, and then you get false prices and all this sort of stuff. At least you're all on the same page, and I think people should understand that you guys that are wholesalers work together as well in a way.
The difference with Warner's Fish Merchants is we are probably, we do have a relationship direct with, with Brim, which that is, and it's a pretty unique relationship that's, it's getting on for 3 decades.
Yeah.
That relationship. So there's such a massive there's a massive volume of trust there that goes with that relationship. And it's something that I don't take lightly. I do see ourselves as a mirror to our customers for that business, and that business is the biggest fillet producer in Iceland, and from our relationship, they are totally committed to supplying the fish and chip industry, and I think that's an achievement in itself, because how the industry is structured today, we're not really seeing that from many other producers,
H&G has a big play, doesn't it, on some of them, and if they can get businesses, if they can get more money for H&G, why would they do fillet? It's a quicker production, they can get back to port quicker, and I think that is where you're saying Brim will stick that out and make sure you get the fillets through.
Well, no, Brimmer, along with a lot of other Icelandic producers, and they are committed to making fillets along with producing many other species. That's been the fillet business has been probably most appealing to Icelandic companies, and my fear is that with what's happening with H&G, because the vessel owners in the Barents Sea, because they're not so specialist in so many species, they can focus on one. They do have their vessels constructed in different ways to be able to switch from producing H&G alongside doing fillets, because H&G was a way of, when they're catching quite fast, to produce something quicker to keep the catching mechanism moving. That's why H&G exists.
Well, I think before we get into the meaty stuff, tell us a little bit about Warner's first. Give people an insight into, how it started, where you're at, and what makes Warner's special or different, maybe.
I suppose it's same as many companies. We do try to make it about relationships and being very open and trying to educate our customers, trying to educate our suppliers too. We were the first company to suggest to our suppliers that maybe they should visit our customers, and then maybe offer our customers the opportunity to visit them. We did do that first, and then there's been many other, and it's inspired a lot of other people to try and do the same, which I'm proud of, And I think on the back of that, we have, and the experience and that I have in the business, and being able to make sure that people are offered a continuous supply, because obviously being involved in every part of the link, we are able to make sure that we are competing at source, to make sure that we have product in line for our customers' demands. And I think that people being able to go to bed at night knowing that they're going to wake up and have product, to quote one customer, the first time I met you, I started to sleep at night, and that's a rather large concern, and that's that makes me very proud to have people that have that confidence in you, which makes me concerned today because of what I feel could possibly be in front of us.
Yeah. No, go on, David.
Well, I say I was just obviously doing a bit of homework, Gary, and I see that on Meet the Team we've got two managers there, one called Luke and one called Jacob. Are they your sons coming through?
Yes.
Are they?
Yes.
Brilliant. That's great then, isn't it?
I have a very great agreement, and this is just a bit of light-hearted fun, that if we need another, I have a great agreement with my wife. If we need a new employee, we just have another child. No, I'm just joking. Yeah. From our 7 children that we share together, we've got 5 of them represented in the business.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, you probably don't know about militaries, but I was going to retire, and then Nick came along at 17 or whatever and knackered my life up, really. But I'd be on a beach somewhere, not in the office doing this, I think. But it's great. As a family business, it's fantastic to have your young coming through, and to watch them grow is fantastic, isn't it?
Well, I think I'm second in command now, because Jacob Warner, he's now running the business, and ever since Jacob, with support from Bethany, I think handing over the management, the general management of the company to them two, has allowed me to do what I can do best, and that's having relationships with producers.
Does it,
making sure that
does it allow you to sort of
product.
Does it allow you to widen your field of vision a bit more? Whereas before you were
definitely. Definitely. I'm definitely looking over the top, and like creating that big picture, and that's one thing I can quote Richard Lodge from The Mermaid from. He was one of the first people who said to me, Gary, take a step back and have a look and acknowledge what you've got and see how you can expand on it. And you can only do that by allowing people to work in the business, and letting them grow, and which is what I've done.
I agree with that totally. I was very much
Yeah.
thinking like that. My way, and then Nick came along and just rebuilt me basically, and I I just look from the outside, there for advice, behind rather in front, and as you say, looking for anything that could go wrong. And I think that for any sort of people that are in a family business listening now, take advice from that, because if you've got young coming through, let them have a go. You won't believe where they'll take the business.
Exactly.
They'll take it to a different direction that you never thought would be possible. But you have to let them do that.
I'm definitely witnessing that.
Yeah.
Luke and Benjamin are working very hard in sales.
Yeah.
Listening to them, very committed to doing their jobs. And every one of the siblings are all working and doing something different in the company, all very hard working, and they definitely complement each other. I'm very lucky in the way that they do cooperate together.
I'd like to ask you both then, if that's the case. It's slightly off the topic of the podcast, but it's in line with what we're talking about here. My kids are quite young. One's 10, one's 5. I don't know if they'd come in the business. They're far too young. I've always said I don't want them to, but that's a different story. I'll say that until they do, and then all of a sudden I will. But how do you manage families and then also manage them at work and then not let it spill over anywhere? So then if you're, at home having Sunday dinner and you're having a big family gig, let's say, how do you not let something that probably bothered you at work on the Friday, how on Saturday, Sunday, do you not allow that to sort of creep in? Or are we all at risk of that?
I don't know, because it depends. If you don't mind me, David, taking the lead.
No, you take the lead, please. You take the lead.
I've always had the great fortune to be able to involve my kids, even at every age, within Warner's Fish Merchants, going to Iceland, making it not a holiday, but, my wife still comes to every meeting, every trip with me. She's always by my side, and I've got to be so grateful for that, to be honest. So I think just involving them, let them create their own relationships, because in the future they're going to need them anyway. With customers and with our suppliers.
So it possibly could spill out, because family and business for you then it's one, essentially. You've turned it into one. Yeah. And that probably has more pros than cons, I'd imagine.
Definitely, yeah. All my guys know they have to work hard to get what they want. They're very committed, to doing the jobs correctly.
So if someone's got the last name Warner, it doesn't mean they can coast and put their feet up because their last name.
Oh, definitely. Well, you lead by example, don't you?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when I've conducted interviews, I've always said that, to everybody, you're a reflection of me in this company.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure when you're working that you're happy in your job, because when you're speaking to my customers, you're speaking for me. So at the end of the day, keeping people smiling is, and that's one thing we do have, is a really good environment. We've got a great team. We've got 30 odd people, all doing what they can. In the business.
Makes sense.
Which,
How about you, David? How do you deal with that one?
Well, I'm very lucky with Nick. We get on really well. But obviously, there's only 3 of us in the business, Gary, so a bit different. But before Nick joined, Leslie actually used to work for my dad. That's how I met my wife. And so she's probably worked for Miller's longer than any of us. And
you're a dark
what
horse,
used to happen on a Sunday, we used to be sat around the table, and they'd all be telling me how to run the business. And I'd be going, look, you've got really good beef there, really nice red wine, and you're all telling me how to run the business. Just, wind your neck in sort of thing. What sort of holiday did you have last time? And where have you just been now? Don't tell me how to run the business. Of course, then Nick came in, and that was a big change for me. And I remember speaking to Stella and saying, I don't know how I'm going to handle this. But I think as it went along, I was so proud of what he did, and so in awe how much probably better he was than me at his age. But instead of being upset, I was jealous because he's an extension of me, isn't he? If you get what I mean. He's part of me, and he's part of my dad and part of my granddad. So why shouldn't every generation move forward? And the way we do with disputes is because Leslie's like the casting vote. So we'll have a discussion about it when we go, right, what do you think, Les? And we put it to a vote, and once it's put to a vote, that's it. It's over. We don't mention it again. Yeah, that's what we're going to go with. And instead of going, I told you so, we go with it and we learn from it. And up to now, he's never made a mistake yet. So brilliant, But I think you can't dwell on things. I'm not saying it'll never happen, but just discussing and being a family and getting through it as a team rather than, getting upset about something, because you don't know unless you try these things. You don't know, do you? And what you might think's not a very good idea could actually be an amazing idea. It's just that you can't see through it, And I think that's the great thing of working with families, is that it's brilliant. But you've all got to pull the weight. What you can't have is, like you say, and you kept saying it, Gary, and I got that, you've all got to work hard. If you've got one that's not working hard, that will be a problem, not the fact that you're working together and making decisions. It's the workload putting into it.
I think in my mind, if the boys ever wanted to come in the business, I think I'd say to them, go work somewhere else, prove your worth, learn from someone who's better than me, then come to me. But then there's the other argument, which is, I could train them up too, but I just feel like I just feel like a friend of mine has got a haulage company, and he said to me, his son wanted to come in the business. He said to him, what can you offer the business? What have you got that you can offer the business? And I get that logic too. But I'm in the camp between both. I've got two kids that when they come to the warehouse at the moment, all they want to do is go on the forklift. So, so it's slightly different. Yeah.
I never wanted to do anything else. I used to lay in bed, not wanting to go to school. I just wanted to come and work for Warner's. Yeah. That's all I ever wanted to do. I used to dream about, where I wanted to take this company, and that's all I've ever thought about.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, where I'd like to go.
Do you sleep there then, Gary?
Yes.
You just sleep.
No.
So I made a mistake earlier, and actually, Gary, the article you helped us with was actually in November 2023, and at the time, fish prices were low, and I remember reaching out to several people in the frozen at sea fish game, and only a couple of people would come back to me, and you were one of them. And I think at the time you were saying, look, just be careful, because you were saying suppliers at the time weren't holding a lot of product because the interest rates were so high. There was a lot of low stock levels. And you were basically sort of saying to people, look far down the road. Don't just enjoy it because it's cheap now, which is obviously, don't get me wrong, it was cheap. One of the things that I sort of say to a lot of people on the podcast, I've said it to David recently in a pod squad, is everyone's talking about having to increase all their fish prices. And that's understandable if you need to. Like, we've got calculators on our website now, which will help people calculate this. But when everyone went and put their prices up, when the fish was going up to like $230, $240 a case, then it dropped significantly. So no one dropped their price, obviously, because they didn't need to. That you're not going to do that. I'm not suggesting they should have had to, but let's say they drop it. Like now, they don't have to go as high as they think they do, because they've probably factored in that cost to some degree. Yes, wages are higher, energy is stabilized. And I just think, from my point of view, should we be maybe focusing on actual margins a bit more rather than feeling, if that makes sense?
I think there's a bigger picture than that, to be honest. Because I think there's a perspective of fish and chips, because even at the price they are today, I don't know, I Googled average price of a pint, and then I Googled average price of fish and chips. Virtually no difference. Yeah. And why does the price of beer never get challenged as much as the price of fish and chips.
Yeah, I'd agree with that logic.
Because at the end of the day, to me, everybody's goal should be more in line with changes people's perspective about the price of fish and chips, because it is too cheap. And fish and chip shop owners feel they are beholden to keeping their values of service down, which is ridiculous in my mind, in my thinking. And, that's why I feel that having a bigger voice, the problem with fish and chips is it's very fragmented. There's so many people's differences in what they feel they need to deliver to be the best in the world at their fish and, I just, having a singular representative for everybody can have that job of, I spoke with NFFF about it, and we together spoke with the government about doing it, because obviously their duties having an effect on supply, so perhaps they could contribute to trying to change this view. But I think that's what needs to happen, and that's where we need to be working.
I think what doesn't help is that we are as an industry, it's a nation of shopkeepers. It's 7,000 to 10,000 independent people, and that's not an insult.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is that everyone's got there's a common goal, and that's to grow your business, do well. But then we all make independent decision making, and I think then we worry about the shop down the road or the pub down the road. And I saw a comment on one of the fish and chip groups the other day, and they were saying, if you go into a local pub, you'll see how busy they are. And actually hospitality is probably struggling more than fish and chip shops. I agree with you though, when our industry head body, NFFF, are talking about put your price up, put your prices up. I haven't got a problem. Do what you need to do to make a margin. I do believe that. But I think just blanket whacking your prices up without looking at your margins is a risk. That's my opinion. And I also think we shouldn't be shouting in the media that fish and chip shops put their prices up. I'm really against that. I've never heard your perspective on that, David, but I'd like to hear it in a second. But
you've obviously got some items on the menu that just are making a lot of money. They're up there with the GP, but obviously your fish is your biggest thing you buy. So you need to be really careful with that. And as you know, we weigh every bit of fish we cut, any waste we've got, we use. We get the most out of we can, because in my shop, we call it white gold. It is the most expensive thing we buy. So we need to look after it. Defrosting it properly, keeping that protein, all these sort of little things that we're going to discuss as this masterclass goes on. But, you need to say, well, what GP do I want to get back from that? And you try and get that and then reflect that in your price. And as you know, I've got calculators that we put it in, works it out, and that's what we should be selling it for. And we also take in VAT as well. And I think you've got to work with that. And I don't think you've got to look at your individual shop where you are, because whatever the ceiling is, where I'm in York, it's probably a different ceiling to Birmingham, different ceiling to Leicester or London or whatever. And I think you have to take that into a board, because you maybe can't charge the same, but you can still do it by cutting your fish better, using your waste up, but saying what a fantastic meal it is, because it's not easy to make fish and chips. Everyone thinks, when I used to train, you go in with a potato and a fish and go, look, I've got a potato and a piece of fish here. It can't be that hard. And by the end of the 8 hours, their heads were going to blow up. And it is it's a difficult product to do. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, but if you were part of a bigger organisation, as regard pushing the value of fish and chips, the nutrition of fish and chips, if we had one single body whose job it was to do that,
do you think that
would be a lot easier for everybody? At the end of the day.
Do you think Seafish tried to do that about all the, when they were doing all the nutritional stuff and how good it was for you?
I think Seafish are retail driven because retail is the only thing they can get feedback from.
Yeah,
right.
Because it's very difficult for them to work with fish and chip shops and the fish and chip industry because it doesn't have a single body to go to, because the NFFF doesn't get the support it should have from fish and chip shops.
Very true.
In my opinion, every fish and chip shop should be a member at NFFF. NFFF should be a very powerful, have a solid base of very committed fish and chip shops who know and can trust that body to go out there and do its job. And today, I don't think it gets the opportunity to do its best because it doesn't have enough committed members.
I agree.
In my opinion,
I agree with you.
You know, at the end of the day, it's very easy to sit back as a fish and chip shop owner and judge the very few hard-working people that put hours and hours into that organisation. Some of it may be misplaced, judged by others, you know, not judged by me, because I do see what effort individuals do. But for me, NFFF should get better support from Seafish. It doesn't. You know, 15% of all frozen at sea fillets used to go. It's the biggest individual sector in consumption of fish and chip shops. It needs to be a bigger it needs to be a bigger individual sector on the consumption of fillets because, you know, we're going to see a lot less fillets going forward if the market doesn't react. And, you know, I think having a strong individual voice is what our industry needs.
I think that's really good, Gary, you said that, because I've been a member for 35 years of the NFFF.
Yeah.
Would always carry on. I did the Quality Award when Seafish started it. And I'm a great believer in that. And I think you saying that, I think, you know, obviously I was a board director, as people know, and trainer there. And yes, they're going to say, well, Davey's going to say that. But to hear that from you, my friend, to say, you know, everyone should get behind the NFFF enjoying. And what it costs, you know, people go on about what it costs. It's a bag of chips a day or a bag of chips a week. It's crazy.
I think 2 points I'd like to make, and I'm not going to be critical, David. I know you're probably waiting for this, yeah. But one thing I'd say, you're already both telling me off. I'm not going to say anything critical. Well, actually, I am a little bit. But Seafish, I genuinely think, I've said it on the pod squads, Seafish has, in my opinion, and I'll say it to anybody at Seafish, Andy Gray, who I get on really well with, they've turned their back on this industry. I really do think they have. Like,
yeah, I agree with you more.
They the last 10 years, they have literally, well, not even the last 10 years, but let's focus on the last 10 years. They gave up the quality award because they didn't want to do it anymore. So NFFF took it on. They then got rid of the awards, essentially, which then NFFF has now took on, with no forward support from Seafish to say, you know, you've took on the awards, let's help you carry on. Here's some funding for the next 3, 4, 5 years, or even indefinitely, because why shouldn't they? Because, like Gary said, the fish and chip sector is probably one of the biggest contributors to Seafish's funds. And Gary is right. The fact that they can't collect evidence or real evidence from the industry is difficult. I still see figures that Seafish put out now, and I think, where did they get this from? Like, what the hell?
Can I interrupt there? The problem with Seafish is itself. They want to deliver everything that doesn't cost anything, because all they want to put money into is themselves.
Like every other quango.
You know, the biggest burden on the Seafish is the cost of the whole operation. They organise, it's so, you know, they are totally opposite. They get free money to just distribute between themselves, to just collate a few figures, guess a few numbers, and sell it, you know, and pass it on to people who ask for it. They're not actually funding anything because they can't afford to fund anything because they spend it all on themselves.
Yeah, I think half the problem,
you know, like NFFF doesn't have that luxury.
No, they don't.
You know, the tens of thousands of pounds that I give them, they spend on themselves, not on my industry.
The biggest, like any quango, and you know, their first job is to make sure they still have a job. Like, without being rude, like, that is just the way we see it. Like, they're getting every measure they've taken over the last few years is for their own existence. And I get that, because without them, they can't help anybody. But I do genuinely think they don't want to help the fish and chip industry, because I think there's that aspect of the data collection from retail and so on. But also, they don't see it as a healthy thing to do. Why help fish and chips? Fish and chips is a fast food product to them. Now, if they want to come on the podcast and tell me otherwise, they're more than welcome. Like, and I've invited them on many times, and they haven't. And I just think that, for me, I think that they have turned their back on this industry, much to the detriment of the NFFF to some degree. I think that they could have really done with their support many times over. And I don't know anything. David would probably know more than me, but he'd never talk about it here because it's quite private like that. But I think that for me, when I see Seafish do what they do, I just think, they bring out a report. Oh, we're doing this. Oh, we're doing that. It's just like, is that all you've got? Like, do something. Come on. Like, when you know that 99% of people that are introduced to fish is usually because of fish and chips or fish fingers. Yeah. So in the UK anyway.
Realistically, we do not need a body to promote fish. We do not need, because at the end of the day, with the way the fish industry is going, how much more consumption do we really need? You've got Norway, Russia, who've been overfishing an area for decades. You've seen 70% reduction in quota in less than 5 years, purely because they refuse to follow scientific advice like they've done this year. They had scientific advice recommending they reduce the quota 32%, stick to that for 2 years, and you should see an increase in the third year. No. Industry says, well, we have a law, you cannot reduce quota more than 20%. We're trying to protect industry. Why can't they listen to science? Why are we overfishing an area today by only reducing it 20 odd percent when the recommendation was 30%, 32%? If the 32% recommendation went to Iceland tomorrow, that's what industry would follow. And that's why over decades you've not seen more than a 10% fluctuation in Iceland.
Yeah.
When you say the fishing ground, are you talking about the Barents Sea there?
I'm talking about the Barents Sea, yes.
Yeah.
There's, at the end of the day, we're feeding NGOs, we're giving them the food to come and attack our industry, because in essence we are doing what they accuse us of by not following recommendations
from the scientists, marine biologists saying, leave this, and as you said, that's 20%. They're saying knock another 12 off for 2 years, so 64% over 2 years, and your fishing grounds will be back to normal again.
Well, not back to normal, but we should see a positive increase in quota. That was the. As I've been.
Yeah, as you say, Guy, if you did this over 5 years, which I know is a long time in a business life, but this would protect the seas, and we'd all reap from that, wouldn't we?
Yes, definitely.
I was in Norway last year, and they put on a presentation. Seafood Norway put on a presentation with some scientists, and they were saying that they are actually acting now. And that's why obviously you've got this reduced quota. But what you're saying is if they'd done it sooner, it probably wouldn't have led to this.
No, they're not reacting now.
They're not.
They're not reacting now. They can stand there and say, at the end of the day, they never followed recommendation. And at the end of it, we all want positive. As far as if they're recommending 32%, they've only gone 25%. We're overfishing. So another reduction is going to be needed next year. And is that what we need to hear today?
No.
Is that what we, at the end of the day, we could have been getting behind what we know is positive steps. But really, it's the unknown. Iceland cannot go there because there's an agreement once the quota goes below 340,000, all partner nations can't catch in the Barents Sea.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was in Norway, they seemed to take issue with the fact that Russia was working with the Faroese and overfishing. So they obviously didn't take any responsibility. What you're saying is how true is that?
I don't accuse Russia. I accuse the collective.
The collective.
This is an agreement made between both parties, the fisheries, And I don't believe companies that, like I can't even pronounce what they call themselves today. What used to be Naribo, the Glacialis brand. I don't believe a company that would invest in an infrastructure like what they have would just go out catching fish willy-nilly, because they'd be out of business in no time.
Yeah.
And you're not going to invest billions in brand new vessels like they've just done. They've just built 10 new vessels. So I don't think the Russians are out there just catching willy-nilly. There are species that are more volume and easier to catch, pelagic species that they can catch.
Do you think because Russia being the bad guy at the moment in the news, is that why it's easy to blame those guys?
There's definitely some smoke and mirrors being, I think so. And obviously I'm not an advocate of Putin, not for 1 minute. I don't want my position to be judged from that, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's a big influence from media, this spying vessels and overfishing and just landing in Russia. I don't believe it's happening.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because obviously over the years, well, if we go back 30, 40 years, the ascendant product was chilled fish. That was all the UK really pretty much knew. And then over the years, that sort of crept all the way down to what many people say, 10% of the industry maybe, from where it was 100%. And then frozen at sea is obviously, catapulted forward. But a couple of the main reasons was people like the fact that it was, locked in freshness, like Bird's Eye say about the peas as such, it's locked in freshness. And, and then also they like the stability of the price. It was a lot more stable. You're not just getting a call every day from your fishman saying, oh, it's this much today, it's that much today. It does seem like it's a bit more all over the place the last, 5-6 years. How do we ever get to a place of more stability, do you think?
Well, I don't believe we had the stability what you say about, to be honest. I remember being a young lad working alongside my father, and this bloke coming in telling me Daddy was shutting shop down because cod's going to go above £10 a kilo, £10 a stone. And you've always had the fluctuations because particularly in the fresh days, you had, like today, for instance, we've got a 10-day storm forecast in Iceland. Yeah. Fresh fish is going to be difficult to get a hold of. You've got massive vessels with, 1,000-ton capacity actually sheltering today in Iceland because of the weather. These things create, and did then, peaks and flows. Yeah. So you had greater stability in supply. But in different times of the year, when they're fishing in different areas, you see different, early on in the year, when Iceland's catching more northerly, you'll see a lot more 32 plus, so you might see 32 plus seas back, and haddocks are less available, so their price go up. So these fluctuations have always been
there
around through all my life.
Do you think I would say the same. It's up and down. It's part of your year's work, and you take it on board, you get your pricing right. And it's something I've really never looked at. It is what it is, and like you're saying, it's what's going out on the sea that causes that, and the time of year. Do you think, as you're going back, you were saying it's the media that's really rocked us this last, let's say, 5 years about fish, about how much it's costing and all this sort of stuff. I think media doesn't help us understand the pricing of fish. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. But
and I think having somebody like you on, Gary, just reminding people, it's like, I remember a friend of mine used to say about, you never talk about the good potatoes. All you ever talk about is the bad ones, you'll have had 9 months, 12, 11 months of fantastic spuds, and then you have 3 weeks of really bad one, and that's all you talk about. And you remember that last year, but I couldn't say to you, well, what was the last good potato you had? They wouldn't know. But they could tell me the name of where the farm was, everything about it. And I think, to me, I'm with you. It fluctuates. It's part of it. Don't you? I don't mean it. Don't you understand? But it. If it's not about, it's not about.
Well,
and they can't get a megaphone and go, right, guys, we're here. Can you come here? They've got to go hunting it. They've got to harvest the sea, haven't they? And they've got to go find it.
Well, at the end of the day, they don't have to hunt the cod and the haddock.
Right.
They have a quota that they're allowed to catch. So basically, cod and haddock, particularly in Iceland, is only seen as a bycatch.
Really?
It's something, yes, it's a bycatch. We are, they will make the cod last all year. They will target it. So, like Brim, for instance, will try to catch the more difficult, like Greenland halibut, redfish, Marinus mentella. So the main part of the catch might be that, and then the last few days catch the haddock and the cod. Or if they have a particular, if they've been trying to catch, like saithe, for instance.
Yeah, saithe, yeah.
Saithe is something that for the last 3 years that has been hard to come by. So if they do hit an area where they have been able to hook into a bit of saithe, then they may save the cod for the next trip.
Where would saithe go into, Gary? Restaurants?
What markets?
Yeah.
There's a big market in Germany, Europe, Eastern Europe, the US, the UK, into Asian businesses.
I think one of the crazy things is that the UK really does have this obsession with cod and haddock. Like, whereas in America, I was chatting to a customer of mine in America the other day, actually, and he's not gone onto frozen at sea at all. He's buying Alaskan cod. He's bringing on Alaskan pollock soon. He's trying to keep it local, but America's very focused like that at the minute anyway, like very hyper local. And whereas, the key point with America is that if cod and haddock gets too expensive, they will move over to a different fish protein. They're not really bothered as long as it's white to some degree. They'll have tilapia, they'll have pollock, they'll have whatever. Whereas in the UK, especially in the fish and chips setting, people won't really budge from cod and haddock. And
I think on the periphery, you might be right. But to be honest, with my experience in the US, the Icelandic frozen at sea is going to specific high-end users who won't use anything else.
Okay.
They will use haddock instead of cod, as long as it's frozen at sea. But I did have an operation for several years, working in the US, selling and distributing, and it is at the top end business. They are,
That's interesting.
It's normally multiple organisations that are swapping from the many monopolies.
I did talk to
operate in the US.
I did talk to a frozen at sea fish supplier in Las Vegas. What was the name of the company? I can't remember now. This was last year because another customer wanted to be put in touch with someone that can do frozen at sea fish, but he wanted it to be as British as possible. Hence why he got in touch with us, because he wanted our batter. And then I spoke to another chap in Canada, and again, he wanted to source frozen at sea fish. So if you're doing foreign stuff, I'll know who's called next time. But it seems to be running around in America, especially if you've already got contacts. So, but no, it is interesting that you say that, But you're right. I think it would probably be a premium product, just like it is a premium product over here. And I think maybe the consumer hasn't quite got their head around the fact that it is a premium product. Just because it's being battered doesn't mean it's not a premium product.
It is a premium product.
Yeah.
And I think myself personally, that it takes some beating. Good cod, good haddock. Take whether it's fried, poached, whatever, takes some beating in taste, and it's it's in our DNA as people that love fish and chips. It's in our DNA, and to swap it out to something else, I don't.
You go to Boston, New York, fish and chips is still like you go to Wetherspoons, all your pub chains.
Yeah,
it's fish and chips all over the world.
Yeah.
Well, US, UK is still main meal coming out.
Okay, interesting.
You know, and comparable, it's terrible. You know, but they do try to make the best of it.
A friend of mine's looking to open a fish and chip shop in that neck of the woods, actually, near Harvard, actually. So that's Boston, isn't it? And no doubt he's got a shop over here at the moment and he's looking to relocate. So that'll be interesting. And I think I got told off the other day, actually, David, because you said fish and chips can't be beaten. And I said on one of the last podcasts that fish and chips never makes you say, after eating a good portion of fish and chips, wow, that was amazing. And my friend took issue with that. And I think what I meant was great fish and chips does make
I'm off.
Shut up. So, but I was trying to say, like, after eating fish and chips, maybe it's because I'm in the trade, I don't ever say, wow, that was amazing. And maybe,
do.
But I maybe that's just my taste profile. But well-constructed fish and chips, maybe again, because I look at it from a very technical point. So, you know, I really dissect fish and chips. Very rarely do I eat fish and chips like a regular person because I'm not a regular person. I'm in the trade. So, but that's what I meant. I wanted to add a bit of context to that because he'll be listening to this looking for a retort. So that's my retort.
I think you've got that wrong, Stella. I think people love it.
No, people do love it. I'm not knocking that. People do love it, and they should.
The major difference in the US is they can hit the price point without judgment.
Yeah. Well, again,
they can
I'd imagine
give you shit fish and chips and charge you plenty.
And I'd imagine that's probably because it's not a native product to them. I wonder if they can get the price up on hot dogs and all the burgers and stuff like that. I don't know is the answer because I've never been. So.
And going back on that where we started, Gary, because I've written it down. You were saying that you give £10,000 to whoever. I think you were intimating maybe Seafish.
Seafish,
yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could just give half of that to the Federation and maybe other suppliers help them and put money behind them and get more campaigns going and whatever, because obviously they're short on resources. You know, they're run by people that are in the business. You know,
well, I think to have grounds for that argument, the fish and chip shops need to stand up for themselves and join the NFFF. Get that big body ready. You know, we're having an awards at the end of the month. Supply will be represented there 100%. Every one of fish and chip shops that are not paying a membership are not represented at that awards.
True. Very true.
So how many percent, 1%, 10%, 20%, however many, pay the membership? The other 80% don't have a right to be reaping the rewards from that show, from that.
Very
you
true.
Know, maybe it can be done differently, you know, because everybody can be, you know, anybody can judge. But at the end of the day, if you're going to judge, you've got to be creative in your judgment. You can't just say.
I do also,
you know,
to be devil's advocate here, because I'd be remiss otherwise, and David's already given me a funny look. They also have to build a strong case for people to do that, like, and because
egg.
Yeah, no, there is a bit of egg and chicken. No, I get that. No, but it has to work both ways. It's chicken and egg. I get that, but it does work both ways because you know I give money and. You know, sometimes I question it, and I'm not going to lie, I do and one thing I took issue with, and I said it, I'm just repeating what I said on the podcast is, maybe they need to move away from this volunteer situation, because the argument is, oh, well, we're only volunteers. What do you expect? Oh, well, we're only volunteers. We've only got so many resources because we're volunteers. And actually, if you start paying for talent, and I'm not saying they should go crazy, I've made that clear on that episode, like, then you get rid of that argument of, oh, but we're only volunteers. And I know you see a different side of this, David, because obviously we've had discussions at great length. But I think that for me, it is a bit of chicken and egg situation. But they should lead the way by saying what you're saying, Gary, is support us and we'll do X, Y, and Z and we'll do this. But they've got to show a forward plan, a forward vision. And to those shops that I see in the groups all the time that say, oh, I wish we had a body that did this. Oh, I wish we had a body that did that. There is. Join it, because that's also true too. That is also very true, because I see it all the time with these shop owners, and they're like, oh, fish is going up. We need a body that talks on our behalf. It exists. Here's the link,
Yeah.
And it doesn't come. Yeah. So I do agree that it is also chicken and egg.
I think what Gary
I do agree that it needs to be run by an independent person. I do think that, but I think before you take that step,
just elaborate on that
person needs to come.
Elaborate on that. How do you mean? What like a business person, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Just give it.
I just think a seafood professional who knows. I've always thought that. I'm not putting an application for anybody here, but I've always thought Julie Snowden would probably fit that criteria quite well, because she knows a lot about the industry. She knows a lot about the supply side. She's a very, very well-informed individual. And, I think having a detached interest in the business as well, not being involved in the fish and chip side of things, could offer a whole different perspective on what direction we could go in to change the public's perception.
And this is one of the positions I put forward in the episode that I did with Andrew, and basically said, if the way that the structure is at the moment, if they essentially became non-executive directors as opposed to directors, and they still have a say and an input in the forward planning of the industry, but then you leave it to that person and the team to then deliver. Because at the moment, one of the common messages I always get is, "Oh, the NSSS run like a chip shop," and it isn't. It should be treated like a business or a lobbying group that is forward thinking. And so, yeah, I think that it'd be better if there was, a director or a CEO, whatever you want to call it, whose job is to execute the demands of the members. And everyone else that's currently involved become part of the steering committee, let's say, advisory board,
I mean, you deal with a lot of fish and chip shop people, Gary, so you know what they're like up and down the country and all around and there's different folk, isn't there? There's people that would go, yeah, Federation's great, I'm going to get involved, which they do, like me. But there's also people that don't even care. They're just apathy and, what's it going to do for me? And they're very belligerent to even talk about it. And I think it's those people that need to be targeted. And I think they're probably the ones that moan the worst as well, because they do nothing about it anyway.
We also need. I agree with that. The industry needs personal. They need to also take personal responsibility for their own singular business at the same time.
Yeah,
I'm not so sure you need those people in your organisation anyway, because with experience, that type of person that you're talking about is probably somebody who is struggling, somebody who is operating, working quite hard at the small end of the business, trying to get as much as they can out of a £1,000 take, a £2,000 take, or a five. It's generally they are trying to do their best. And, the people who we need to tap into to get behind is, because one thing I've witnessed, the way that this industry is going in, we are getting far more professional, well-organised people coming into our business. So some beautiful shops being built, am I allowed to name anybody?
If you want, yeah.
Brother's franchise.
Yeah.
You know, you look at, Murgatroyd's. These are magnificent businesses where people, you've got the owner of that shop following every plate out as it goes out to, people who are very, very passionate. And these are the people that we need to
steer the industry,
grow confidence in and invest in the NFFF.
If I was the NFFF, and I've said this before, I'd be giving select shops like that, businesses like that, free membership in lieu for maybe some time back in expertise, build a little board, and say, look, I don't know the owners, but I think one's called Andrew at Murgatroyd's. Andrew, have you got 10 hours a month to give, or 5 hours a month to give us some support, long-term planning, strategic vision for the industry? Build these little segments out, and I think...
Well, Andrew is very, very keen to support anybody. He's got a magnificent business there. He's a lovely guy. And I've taken people who want to start out and introduce them to him, and he just... pardon the pun, spills the beans.
Yeah.
And he's very, very willing to contribute to the industry, and he definitely would be a key partner.
I don't know. I think we've jumped onto a.
Well, obviously, we're not really crediting the actual people well, because obviously people like Caroline, everybody concerned put loads of time into NFFF. They really do.
Yeah,
they do work hard.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
but I do think that we've slipped onto a conversation. This could also be a pod squad. You could be on a pod squad right now, Gary. But back to fish for a moment. So we had some questions from people, and David, did you want to add something before we carry on? Or are you happy
I'm finished with that. I'd like to get on with what we were talking about.
You had your hand up.
I just wanted to know your operation, really, Gary, is how you go about. Obviously, you work with Brim and the Icelandics really closely. You're probably the biggest importer from Iceland into the UK. I just wanted to know how you go around buying. How far in front do you buy? Is that price set when it's caught? Is it set when it's coming on board? Or is it something you discuss before they go out? These sort of things that I would like to know is how you get your freezers full.
It depends who I'm dealing with.
Right.
With Brim, we work together. I don't know how far back to dissect this, to be quite honest, but we work together. At the start of a year, I will know how much we're going to catch each month. Guess, how much we would hope to catch. I would be asked my market opinion, how do we think the year's going to be? And we'll all have an opinion in a group discussion on that. But then on the day-to-day judgment, I will always be giving market feedback to Brim. And they will also be collecting offers from America, from Europe. Other companies will also be trying to get involved at the purchasing end. So that's basically what sets the price, the true market price. One thing that I feel that Warner's, or what I try to do, is to inform our customers where we need to be to keep supply coming into this country. Where do we need to be?
Is that meaning price?
And that'll be my selling price.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, for me to buy fish today, to keep it coming this way, rather than seeing it going to America, rather than seeing it go into any other market, that is where I base my price, regardless of what I've paid for it. So whether Warner's is making money or losing money. When we spoke about when the market was collapsing, we lost significant sums. But what we did do is kept the product flowing, because, every time a Brim vessel lands, whatever commodity's been produced for this market is coming, whether I want it or not.
Yeah. And how often does that come in then, Gary?
well, there's 3 frozen at sea trawlers that catches that lands every 40 days, but they're actually
Stagger.
they don't come in on the same day. They don't leave on the same day.
Got you.
But right now, they're all sheltering because of the weather.
So one thing that a friend of mine, I was talking to, and I told him he was coming on the podcast, and again, this isn't set in stone, but it's just a feeling that he has. So he says, why does it seem that 12 to 18 months after a fish shortage and high prices, there's suddenly plenty of fish available, and catch dates from the shortage period, who's holding on to it? So there's this theory that a lot of people have that, and it might be true, you tell us, that people are stockpiling and they're waiting for the market to shift upwards to then release. Now, I deal with ambient product, so I have cheap warehousing, or at least a lot cheaper than frozen warehousing. So I'd like to know is it just being stockpiled so it can be driven up the price, and can that even be possible with energy prices?
Well, no one individual can rule the world.
Yeah.
So I don't see anybody stockpiling product. We do stock to, like I was saying to you earlier, at the start of the year, 32 plus will, and as the year progresses, you'll see less and less 32 plus. Also, as the quota goes down, they'll move to more 8, they'll catch to a different area where you see more 816s. So you're able to, and also, so it's my responsibility to my customers that love 32 plus and are loyal to Warner's to make sure I've got that product. So it is my job to store. Brim don't store.
Yeah.
That's,
So
Yeah.
I store.
one of my
But, at the moment, I'm not getting that opportunity.
Yeah.
Because there just isn't enough supply.
And with this storm coming, Gary, that's going to knock on further for you, isn't it?
Not really, because like I was saying to you earlier, during each trip, it doesn't take long to catch their allocated quota that they can catch each trip.
Well, one of my customers is one of your customers, Gary, and I won't name him because it's not relevant. But he was saying that he's never had a problem with you ever because he pays you on time. He has a good relationship with you. And I've mentioned this before in other podcasts, but I've noticed that especially in the fish market, when things get volatile, you guys want certainty. And the people that get dropped off first are bad payers, and people that maybe aren't loyal, that are shopping around all the time for 10p here, 20p there, a pound here. And he was saying to me, I've been with him for probably longer than 8 years, 12 years. And he goes, I've never bought fish off anybody else. He's always looked after me. He's always been at market rate. And I pay him on time and I've never had a problem. And I think he was using the argument of for those people that shop around all the time, don't build trusting relationships. They will be the ones that have a problem. Do you you're not going to argue against that, obviously, but what's your thought process there?
Well, first of all, that makes me very proud because that's how I want our customers to feel that they're part of the group, they're part of the family. At the end of the day, we, as far as I'm concerned, as long as I look after my customers and I look after my suppliers, Warner's can do okay in between. That's my philosophy. As regards people that shop around, that's not their fault. Because there's a lot of people who aren't quite as committed and as informed in the business who are picking the telephone up and telling them what they want to hear.
Yeah.
That there's one of my competitors who's now said that prices are going to start falling in May. Where that comes from, I've got absolutely no idea.
But that,
but at the end, and then I've got other competitors that who have absolutely no idea of what it's going to cost them to replace their product because they just speculatively shop on the open market. And if they've got the commodity today, they've got it, and they don't care if they haven't got it tomorrow. Now, if you run your business with the view of not really being concerned about where your next purchase is coming from, because I know that I'll be perfectly reliable for that person to come back, and as long as he deals within his terms, he'll get his product.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's interesting because obviously you're in this for the long game, and that's why those things matter, and it does matter where the next pallets are coming from.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, all I can be concerned about is what can I do to complement my customer's business.
Yeah.
I can keep him informed. I can keep him secure in the knowledge he can open his shop tomorrow. That's my main objective.
Yeah.
What my competitors are doing, that's out of my control. But they need to be careful of what they're trying to achieve, because if people go out there to if I go out there to compete with my customers, I'm not guaranteed to get supply, so I can't let that deflect me in what my goals are. At the end of the day, I just need to make sure that my suppliers smiling and the chain is keep coming, and I think that's why year on year we see growth every year since day one. Every single year is growth, and the majority of that is in fish and chip shops, and the majority of that is more people in Iceland having the faith in what I can offer them, because most of my supply does come from Iceland. I can't deny that. We get support from Faroes, we get some product from Russia, but and that's like Naribo, for instance, and we'll carry on. They're not called Naribo today, but they were the biggest fillet provider to the UK. They won't be going forward. Who's there to replace them? Nobody. So we need to convince producers to have faith to carry on producing fillets. The Faroese boys, Edinburgh, Gaddis, both have H&G capabilities on their vessels. The last trips they took, 100% H&G. We've got to compete with that. That's what we've got to compete with, not with somebody who just wants to sell a pallet they bought cheap for a minor. That's what's attacking our business today.
Supply.
So supply. And if we do not ensure that I'm paying that price to compete with the H&G in that market, then this,
so we're looking at the wrong thing as an industry. We're looking at price, whereas really we should be looking at supply. And I think this was echoed when I was on the Oslofjord in Norway, because they had a ship that could do both, and I sort of said to them, what determines that? And they gave me an answer which I genuinely can't remember, so I don't want to butcher it. But the fact is, if you've got a business and it means you can go out and it takes half the time to catch something and then process it collectively and then sell it quicker, why would you then do fillets, which takes 10 times more effort and then have a lot more waste and all this stuff? Like, for me, I was looking at that from a business point of view, because I'm in the supply side of the business, look at thinking, if I had a boat, I don't think I'd want to be doing fillets. So and you could see that he said, they do want to do it because they understand the fish and chip industry wants fillets. And so my thought process was, and it's a question I wanted to ask you, is, in your mind, not just Icelandic, but let's just say the UK, what sort of split is there between people that are buying tightly graded fillets? So let's say 10 to 12s, 8 to 10s, all of that. And then 32 pluses. Oh, it's a minority. Okay. Yeah. And they obviously paid for that because obviously they're getting a product that's tightly graded. So I always used to buy 32 plus when I was in the shops, and
that's cod,
that's cod off it, and just cut it down. But obviously my family now they buy graded, and it just always made me wonder. A friend of mine said to me, "Oh, why don't we just have H&G over here and we process it ourselves?" And I was like, because I think for me that goes completely the opposite against the grain. I think people want less work, not more work. I don't know what.
I mean, I'm Haddock, Gary, and I'm 1632. That's what I use.
Yeah.
Haddock.
Yeah, well, you'll have seen some very, very big changes in a very short period.
Yeah.
Or if you haven't yet, you're gonna.
I have, yeah. I have. And one thing I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to name who I use, but I will off record when we shut this down.
All right, okay.
And very good friends of mine. I've worked with them like you a long time. I'm extremely loyal to them. Trust them explicitly. Don't argue with them. A lesson I learned very early in life, Gary, when I thought I was a real good businessman, and this is what I'm trying to get to, is somebody offered me the same brand at a cheaper price. Okay, so I thought I was doing a really good thing, and I started to buy it off this other company. And this guy kept ringing me up saying, "Do you want any fish?" No, I'm all right, thanks. We haven't been busy. And after 2 weeks, he said, "David, can I just ask you something? Where are you getting your fish from?" I said, well, and I told him. And I said, "Well, I'm getting it a bit cheaper." He said, "Well, why didn't you just ask me? Because we all deal with each other." They couldn't wait to tell me they got your order. So just, a lesson in life, if you get a fish and you can get it cheaper, tell us, and then it's up to us whether we match it or not. And then it's your decision. But please be honest with your supplier. Learn that lesson now and you'll never go wrong. And what I'm trying to get to is, I know you bring brim in, but we can get brim from other suppliers. So what I'm trying to say is you bring the brim in and sell it to other suppliers as well, don't you? That's what I'm trying to say. Or do other people
On occasion, I have done, yes.
Yeah.
If it complements the business, I will do that.
Yeah.
Fish and chips comes first.
Yeah.
We do have partners that we work with. I do not sell to anybody or everybody.
No.
We have a framework that we stick to rigidly because I don't want the brand like the consequence that you're talking about. I try my best not to have that circumstance.
Yeah, got you. But you know what I'm coming from, don't you? Yeah. Yeah, big lesson I learned in life. That big lesson I learned. So just be honest with your supplier and just talk to them, and they will do. They'll do their very best to help you and come to agreement on something.
So I was in a meeting recently, and we were just chatting before we got onto batter mixes, and it was someone who probably knows quite a bit about fish, I'd imagine, and you may know them, but you may not. And again, it's not pertinent. But they said that one of their thoughts was that since the Russian tariff come in, that gave an artificial price to everyone else. So that tariff, let's say it was, I don't know, 30 quid a box. I'm just guessing right now because I don't know. You'd know better than me. They're saying that everyone else then followed suit because it gave them an artificial ceiling to make more profit. What's your thoughts on that?
There's been a number of bumps in the road created by the duty. When the government, I never expected the duty to come along. I expected us to follow Europe's stance because it definitely created a bias. And so once the government put the duty on, they didn't do it like Trump has just done. Tomorrow it's on. They said, right, September it's on. So anything that Russia sold for less than a 20% lower in the market was a win to them. So they basically dumped everything they had in Europe into UK, which started a downward trend. Then once they'd done that, Russia then just totally became focused on Europe. So anything that they could sell retained business in Europe, and it did send the market down. So you did see a market fall to where the difference was, because obviously the Europeans weren't daft. They only had to pay a little bit above less than 20% list. So it basically collapsed the market in Europe as well. And the Russians are forcing cod anywhere they could at that time, And a consequence of that is they've also affected other species because, I've never been able to go when I've been on holiday in Tenerife, been able to go to a local supermarket and find cod. It was all safe and different species. So, but they've, been able to create markets. But a positive from that is every other origin, French, German, they came to the UK looking for a market. So, and the lack of Russian moving from the UK is what's created the difference in value. But we have seen more fish come as a consequence, they used to stay local. So it's not a false, it's just a natural balance of how things have panned out because of the.
It's an adjustment because
there isn't anybody doing anything deliberate to create any inflated prices. It's a consequence of the duty.
So it's an adjustment to the market manipulation. And when I say manipulation, I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean the manipulation of adding a tariff to fish. Yeah.
And not that I think you'd want to listen to the potato podcast, Gary, because even though it is an important part, it's exactly the same mirror of the guys who grow the potatoes. Exactly the same thing. To do with them, it's weather and everything like that. They don't go around inflating prices. That's what it costs to produce that product. Going back to the fish, obviously cod and haddock is what we use in the UK. I'm a haddock person, and I would think your Sheffield, are you starting to encroach into cod there? Sold in most of the shops there in Sheffield. Most shops will sell cod.
Sheffield, Doncaster Road,
yeah, they'll sell cod. I was on a podcast with somebody not so long ago, and they were saying that because of the price of cod, and they're down in Peterborough area, they'd switch to haddock. So do you think we're going to find a lot of people maybe switching to haddock because it is cheaper, which will only drive the price up, as we know? But do you think that's going to happen, or do you think?
Well, they do need to be careful what they wish for, because obviously the quota comparables, there's a lot more cod quota than there is haddock. So yes, haddock was, Iceland basically doubled its haddock stock with no great consumption. That's why you saw the price on haddock depressed so much. So there has been a great gap between cod and haddock, which still remains, and there has been shops that you would never think in a month of Sundays would switch from cod to haddock, make the switch.
Yeah.
And it's obviously bringing but cod still.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah.
And it worries me that I don't think it's going to stop.
And do you think the customers notice? Because they are different taste.
I don't want to go judging anybody, but I would say that a large percentage of people that go into fish and chip shops and eat fish and chips, as long as they enjoy that experience, wouldn't really care. They wouldn't know. And this is, why do fish and chip shops not allowed to call their product fish and chips? When you can go into the supermarket and get a coated whitefish.
That's right.
And they're passing Pangasius, which everything offers a coated whitefish, which is everything you don't want to put into fish. Pangasius hasn't got one nutritional benefit for anybody who's eating it. And yet a fish and chip shop can't call cod, haddock, fish and chips. That's discrimination, and something that needs to be challenged, because you in your business who wants a queue outside his door, somebody coming in to enjoy your wonderful product, is not going to try and pass off a second-rate species that somebody's going to walk out your shop, take one bite and go,
what's that?
I refuse to sell Pangasius. I will never, ever. I've had people asking me to sell it, and I will not sell Pangasius because it degrades fish and chips.
Fish and chips, absolutely.
So I'm not going to sell it.
Interesting thing about Pangasius. A friend of mine's he's got a very good job supplying breadcrumbs, and doesn't sound exciting, but he made a trip to Vietnam, and this is where they coat the Pangasius. So he's going around a Pangasius farm, and he says we turn up at this place, and I won't say who the company that was receiving this product was, because that wouldn't be fair. And it was a few years ago. But he says he turned up and it just looked like a fucking slum. Like, he goes, there was just little rivers everywhere, just like rivers. And he says, and he sees one guy get this like old rusty axle, like a van axle or something, or track, whatever, and just throws it in the river. And he goes, oh, what's that for? He goes, oh, it's iron. He goes, it gives them iron. He goes, so we don't buy iron filings like over here they would. They'd buy like iron filings. He goes, they just literally got something off the back of a machine and lobbed it in. And and he said it, and then he said a couple of the staff were just, and again, like, it is a river, I guess. Like, I guess a couple of the staff were literally just standing on the edge of like a wooden deck, just having a piss in the water. And he goes, like, in the food standards in the UK, like, in comparison, were just night and day. Like,
yeah, but when you talk about having a piss, you know, at the end of the day, what is dumped into the sea?
Yeah, all the time.
Day, you know, at the end of the day.
At least there's a bit more water in the sea.
Yeah,
no. At least there's no, it's true, but at least there's a bit more water in the sea. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll be extra diluted, but you know, there's plenty of excrement that's
absolutely.
by, you know,
No, I do think
it's a good job I eat healthy.
Well, now we've got to be careful what you're saying. But no, so going back to like the Russian sanctions, like, you know.
Yes.
So number one, do you think they've had the intended effect? And broadly speaking,
no.
Okay, no. Oh, that was good. That was quick. And then, do you see them lasting?
Yes.
Okay, great. So perfect. Yeah.
What is Rachel from accounts? Is she going to give any money back?
No.
She can't afford it.
Yeah.
The Russian duty, they don't care. They want that money.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we
don't forget, socialists only get on with spending other people's money.
Yeah, I think that's probably a reason why.
True, Gary. I like that's going to be my saying of the week. That usually when we do a podcast, I have a T-shirt made of what somebody says. That's my new T-shirt.
Yeah.
And I think some of the headwinds across that, like, you know, look at and this may affect your business more than mine, is electric prices. So they are going to be going up, and, you know, interest rates will be going up. Like, how does this affect local things like this affect your business? Because then, that's something you have to pass on. Like, you know, that, you know, this whole net zero, renewables, etc. Electric and gas prices are only going one way. So obviously, you guys would have, I don't know, how many pallet freezer would you have?
We can store 2,000
pallets.
Yeah. We have an ongoing financial commitment of up to, we have a cash availability of well over £12 million. Some of that's overdraft. What I've prided myself on is as my company's grown and we've made money, I always leave it in the business. So, you know, I try to cut my expenses as much. I like to try and be as lean as possible. The cold store situation set up that we have, it's very economical. Our fuel bill's about £500 a month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That will be going up. But yeah, we have a saltwater brine system.
Okay, interesting.
Which our cold store doesn't have a defrost.
Wow.
So, that's very interesting.
But that'd be some investment, Gary, to start with, was it?
It was a massive investment, but it paid for itself in a lot less time than if I'd have spent a third of the money. You know. This paid for itself it paid for itself within 7 years.
What is your knowledge on farming of cod and haddock? Do we see that ever becoming a thing? It keeps creeping its head up and then it goes.
What they need to do, with the experience that I've had and the visitation of farms on cod, is the reason why you do know Pangasius is catfish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the reason what they know about the catfish is it's the most durable fish in the world.
Correct.
You know, in the Florida rivers, it's armored. You know, a crocodile can't eat it. You know, and the skeletal infrastructure with cod and haddock, they cannot get to grow fast enough to cope with the meat. So, you know, in past experiences that I've had, all I've seen is that once they feed and grow cod falsely, the muscle grows too fast for the skeletal structure, and it just the meat just turns to mush.
Mush, yeah.
You know, and you know, cod needs its challenges to become what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
And then there's the problems that you see with like farmed salmon as well. It's been that intensively raised that there's challenges there. Like I've really been put off that, to be honest, farmed salmon. But yeah. And one question, just looking forward, how, and I don't know how far you can look, in your experience, maybe more than anything, Trump being in power, he's obviously going to do what's best for them. Do we see 2026 being better than 2025, or is it just, or is there some? Were you running away? I thought. So yeah, do you know what headwinds are you?
Well, at the end of the day, I promised I wasn't going to be negative.
Yeah,
and we've lost somebody.
Yeah, David's. I don't know what's happened there, but yeah, you go on.
All right, okay. I promised I wasn't going to be negative. And I really don't know where it's going to stop, because I feel that we've seen a 30% reduction in quota. We've seen a far bigger reduction in frozen at sea fillets. You know, the 30% reduction in quota is the least of it.
Yeah.
I think we're closer to 70% reduction in fillets.
Okay.
Wow. And I believe there's a lot of people in the supply side who haven't woken up to that fact yet, and I hope they don't listen to this and use the initiative and do something about it. No, but just joking. But I want them to listen to this, because they have a responsibility to their customers as well. And there's people out there giving the wrong messages.
So if you're a chip shop owner listening to that, what I take from that is it's probably a good idea to start learning how to cut big fish. Maybe.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But that's since day one.
Yeah.
The more work you can do at
the
preparation end,
the better it is. Yeah.
So
I mean, I always say to people, the more work you want done on the boat, you're more going to pay for it.
Exactly.
And it's not much more to do it yourself, and it tunes you in more of what you're working with, what it costs. It's so easy to just open a packet up and just put it in the tray.
I was telling.
Whereas if you're taking a 1632 or a 32 plus, and you're working on it and getting the most out of it it makes you understand more. And in fact, if you do your job right, it's all relative. Yeah. You know, with what you're paying for it.
And that's why we're doing, and this is why we're doing these masterclasses. And the topic at the moment is fish, because we see how important it is. We've done potatoes anyway, but you know, for example, I was telling David on one of the pod squads, I was at a shop a few weeks ago, Gary, and the customer was moaning about the price of fish, and I'm chatting to him while he's cutting fish, hence why it's relevant. So he's cutting fish, and I notice he's just literally scooping off probably, I don't know, a good 7, 8, 10% of each fish and just putting it in the bin. So he's making each fish perfect. And as he's moaning about fish, I was like, have you ever considered doing homemade fish cakes? And he's like, no. And I'm like, but you can't be moaning about the price of fish whilst you're actually throwing away 7, 8, 9, 10%. And we have noticed a pattern now that our fish cake mix is increasing in sales, because people have realised, oh my God, you know, when prices start to creep up again, people start to look at that fish in a different light again. Maybe like David said about what white gold, they'll look at it and think, oh my God. So when it's cheap, everyone sort of thinks, yeah, it's okay if I trim it, you know, but and then put it in the bin. But actually, if you trim it and make something off it, whether it's Yorkshire fish cakes, homemade fish cakes, well, they're both homemade, but let's say a mashed potato fish cake, or even fish bites, like butchers, they don't just get a fillet steak and then put the rest of the cow in the bin, do they? And I think this is where fish and chip industry is probably a little bit behind on those industries,
very much so.
Yeah.
And I think, Stella, I don't know if you agree with me, Gary, but doing things like that, when these price increases come up, they
hurt you less.
They don't hurt you as much. You just, well, I've made loads of money on them fish cakes. In fact, I've sold them for now. All right, we've got a bit more increase, but it'll come down again and we'll get through that. And hey ho, here we go again. And I think cutting fish is so important to what you do. It's probably the most, as rumbling chips, and cutting your fish is the most important thing. Then obviously you've got to produce the goods, but that production foundation behind it all is key to it. And I think if you do it correctly, as you say, these fluctuation in prices, you can ride them and not worry about them too much, because it's a commodity that is going to go up and down.
Yeah.
Simple.
Well, I was at a shop a few weeks ago, and again, similarly, moaning about he must have got an early indication that the fish prices were going up, and he didn't own a set of scales. He didn't weigh one piece of fish that went out of that business. And I just sort of said, like, you can't fundamentally understand anything if you don't know what something is costing you. And you can moan about all the fish guys, all of them. However, you've got no right to if you don't know what it's actually costing you. And I think we've been a bit harder on that, on the messaging on this podcast, to be honest, that you really need to understand your costs.
I think to defend that action, there are some very, very clever people who have been in this game a long time who can look at a piece of fish and tell you precisely without even putting it on a scale. There's some masters out there who've been at it for long, and like going back to, we have a vessel that does not have a grading machine on board.
Wow!
So they're grading 500 tons of fillets.
That's mad, isn't it?
Brilliant, isn't it? Yeah.
And so don't judge those chippies. Don't judge them.
Yeah.
Leave them alone.
I agree with you, Gary, and I can. Yeah. I've been doing it bloody.
I think the difference is
but what we're trying to say, if you really want to, make sure it's bulletproof. I agree with that, but not everyone can do that. You've got staff doing it.
And I think the guys that can't do it will have a scale.
Yeah. But I also think maybe humans aren't infallible. Yeah.
No.
And I think even if you've got scales to test your brain, yeah, like for example, we were talking about this before we started. You're into your fitness, like I bet there's somebody sometimes maybe when you're doing a course, a CrossFit course, measuring your time levels. Yeah. Without it,
there's always somebody kicking my ass.
Exactly. So, and this is the same thing. It's zoning in to know your profits. And I think that this should, for me, what one person that I'll mention, I'll be allowed to mention his name, is Mark Drummond, and I think you do know Mark Drummond, and you know Mark Drummond, David, and that chap knows his profits every day live, he's not using some special system. He's just got a pen and paper with a table, and he knows his GP on that fish every day, and he does weigh his fish. Now, I don't know whether he weighs every single piece of fish, but he does weigh lots. And I've been there when they've cut fish. So I should probably take more notice. So I think that knowing your cost, like you know your cost every day you're not going to, ideally not, you're not going to sell a case of fish that costs you £100 for £90 unless something's drastically wrong. And but what I'm saying is that if you'd found out that somebody had sold a pallet at a £10 a case loss, you'd be fuming. Someone's head's going to roll, I'd imagine, or some retraining is going to happen. And I think it's the same in fish and chip shop. Is that
but that you just said it there. Retraining is going to happen. Mark is great at making people accountable as well.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, those structures that he's put in place, is so we can live his day-to-day life comfortably. At the end, he's a very professional individual who's really good at his job, and he's set up procedures in his company to make everybody accountable, and that's why he delivers a great product. And he knows he's got everything.
I'll send you a link later by email, because we've done some calculators, and people can input all their fish price. They put everything. David shared some spreadsheets, which we'll be sharing with people soon as well. And we just think having a framework, like you say, a framework it probably takes the pressure off everybody in the meantime, off you, off the fish and chip shop owner. Now they can actually see a cost of something. And I think it's always good to have a guide, isn't it? I think business is hard enough to be going in blind. You don't want to find out a year down the line from your accountant that,
definitely.
you sold fish at a loss for a whole year. God.
Stell knows this story, Gary. So I'm cutting the fish one Friday morning, just batting on. And I couldn't find the scale, so I thought, oh, bollocks, I'll just do it. I know what I'm doing. Bang, 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 10 cases cut down into the fridge, ready to go. And Nick's on the front that day, just helping on the front, and he's right at the pass, and everything's coming out. He's picking stuff up and putting it on the boxes, and it's getting sent out. I'm frying away. I was stuck down on chips and taking me off the pan. You go on chips, and I'm there. And he looks at me and he goes, who cut the fish today? And everyone looked at me, and I went, I did it. Why? What's your problem? He said, did you weigh it all, Dad? I said, yeah, of course I weighed it all. Why would I not weigh it? Of course I've weighed it. And he kept looking at me, and everybody else is looking at me. And I went, are you sure you did, Dad? I said, yes. All right. No, I didn't. He says, I know you haven't, because it's all over the place. We can tell just by picking it up. And that was a lesson I learned straight away. If you've got good servers, they know what the weight should be, and they can pick it up and do it. So all of us do it. All of us do it, unfortunately, but it does make a difference. And over a year, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, Gary, we've been easy on you, I think. But is there anything? Is there anything we've forgotten to ask that's really important that maybe we should get out there? I think we've covered most things casually, but.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I just feel that I don't want to make any comments self-serving, but I think it is time to have confidence with who you're buying from, to know that you're not going to get let down, because I think supply is going to be the key. I am finding today, whether I'm taking the opportunity to trade or dealing with fish and chip shops, I'm not short of customers. I'm short of fish.
Okay.
So, there are parts of my business that I will always compromise the trading side to make sure that fish and chip shops have all their needs, because that's the bare bones of this business.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, on that note, we'll let you crack on. We're really grateful.
Okay.
David's put his hand up.
Gary,
again.
can I just say, I've heard about Warner's, heard about yourself, never actually met you. It's been a pleasure to speak with you today. And are you going to the awards, Gary?
Yes, I will be there.
Right, well, I'll what it's like there. It's manic, but if I see you, I'll come and shake your hand, and if I can get time, I'll buy you a beer.
Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet
Same
you.
for you, Stel. Yes, thank you very much. Thanks a lot for your time, guys.
That's a wrap on today's episode with Gary Warner, David Miller and me. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What stood out to you today? Join the conversation in our Ceres podcast discussion group on Facebook. And don't forget, head over to www.ceres.shop to check out our business calculators. They're designed to give your business the edge it deserves. At Ceres, we're committed to helping your business thrive, whether through innovative products or expert insights. We're here to support you. If you have any questions or want to share what you're working on, reach out to us at any time. Until next time, keep frying, keep growing, and we'll see you in the next episode.